President-elect Trump's Day One plans for America might be in jeopardy if a House speakership battle delays his certification. Current House Speaker Mike Johnson faces a tough road ahead. House Democrats say they're united against him, and at least one GOP congressman has said he will not vote for Johnson.
If they think they're somehow going to get a more conservative speaker, they're kidding themselves. We can't get anything done unless we have a speaker.
And there will be no Democrats available to save him or the extreme MAGA Republicans from themselves.
I'll vote for somebody else.
I'm going to keep my options open. We just got to make sure that we get the best person for the job.
I'm losing confidence with each day. Johnson has to do his best to start finally showing that he's going to do what he says and not just continue to try and make deals with Hakeem Jeffries.
All this is going to do is delay us. It's going to delay the certification of President Trump's election. It's going to delay the start of his first 100 days in office, which is the most important.
Fox News correspondent Matt Finn is live in West Palm Beach, Florida tonight with the latest. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Sarah. This Friday, January 3rd, when the Republican-controlled Congress reconvenes, it has the constitutional obligation to select its next Speaker of the House. The current Speaker, Republican Mike Johnson, needs a majority 218 yes votes. As Chad Pergram always says, it's about the math. However, Indiana Republican Congresswoman Victoria Spartz says she's not sure who she'll vote for. Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie says he will not vote for Johnson, and there's speculation PA Representative Scott Perry could challenge Johnson. Now, you may recall back in 2023, the House took several days to vote on a new speaker. In what's considered a worst-case scenario, if the House does not have a speaker on January 6th, it would not be able to certify November's election that Donald Trump overwhelmingly won. Today, President-elect Trump took to Truth Social to slam the previous Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, for raising the debt ceiling, writing, "The extension of the debt ceiling by a previous Speaker of the House, a good man and a friend of mine, from this past September of the Biden administration to June of the Trump administration will go down as one of the dumbest political decisions made in years. There was no reason to do it, nothing was gained, and we got nothing for it. A major reason why that speakership was lost." Now, California Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna says he's not worried about this speakership vote. Today, he told Fox News he believes November's election will be certified.
We're going to certify the election. I plan to show up to the inauguration. It's not about President Trump. It's about honoring the American people. And we've got to get past this thing that everything has to be partisan. You know, when I put forward a proposal of common sense on H-1B reform, I had people on my side saying, why are you doing that, Ro? Let the Republicans fight. Let them destroy each other fighting. That's the wrong approach. We're Americans first. We've got to be solution-oriented. The American people just elected Donald Trump.
Now, two legal experts published an op-ed suggesting how Democrats would be able not to certify President-elect Donald Trump on January 6th. It's just a theory that has been floated around. Back to you guys.
Hey, thanks so much, Matt. Guy, what do you make of this? I mean, we were talking about this before the show. He can only lose one vote. I mean, Mike Johnson, this is going to be, he's between a rock and a hard place, and so is the president if he can't get the speaker back.
Yeah, so the math, as Chad Pergram talks about, is 220 to 215, right? A very narrow majority, at least on paper, but with some of these absences, right, with some of these vacancies, 3 of them, that gets your number down to 217. So it's 217 to 215. There's no margin for error whatsoever. So I understand some people making noises about keeping their options open. What option are we talking about? Is there any viable option other than Speaker Johnson? And if there's going to be a long, protracted issue here, not only could there be a complication, as we just heard, involving the January 6th certification, right, there could be a real threat to President-elect and then President Trump's agenda once he takes office. And that is something that he is going to be, I think, very adamant about. He wants this drama behind him by the time he takes the oath of office.
Absolutely, because he wants day one to start getting work done, and he can't get work done on day one if they don't get this taken care of. You were talking about Corey Mills. We were joking around about that.
Here's the other name.
But he is the other name
of someone that's not all in. Mike Lawler from New York now is saying, let's get this over with, what Guy is saying. But a lot of the hesitation comes from the bill, from that spending bill, which included $100 billion in defense aid, disaster preparedness aid. which didn't necessarily need to be in a bill that was intended just to keep the government open. And that got President Trump, incoming President Trump, pissed off.
Right.
But we need a speaker. Guy is right. We need a speaker.
But it kicked it down the road, right, Lisa? I mean, they kicked the CR down the road. Now what happens come January if we can't get Mike Johnson back?
Well, and it's a tough time because you're talking about mid-March. That's going to be within the first 100 days of President Trump's presidency. And he's got big things he wants to do. So that does give Democrats some leverage in trying to renegotiate that at that time, because, look, we have majorities in the House and the Senate, but they're not large, and they're not filibuster proof in the Senate as well. So that's going to give Democrats some leverage and create some complications. I'll say I've worked on Capitol Hill when John Boehner was there, and also for a little bit when Paul Ryan. There's always going to be grievances against the speaker. But what we saw when Kevin McCarthy fought for his life with those 15 rounds before getting the speaker's gavel in 2023, there are very specific policy demands that were taking place. Capping discretionary spending, an motion to vacate, making it easier to remove the speaker. I've not heard those specific demands with Speaker Johnson here. I think there are legitimate concerns with him, particularly the way that he handled the CR. And sort of not being forthcoming with his fellow Republicans. You know, I had some congressmen joked that I didn't even know I was getting a raise originally, right? So that's not good. You want to have open communication and transparency. But, you know, we're about to find out. So.
If you're a betting person, Guy, what do you think?
You have to,
or out?
I think you bet on Johnson because there is no alternative that really makes any sense. And I think a big difference between sort of that drawn-out mess that we saw with Kevin McCarthy and this time was that was during the Biden administration, right? So we had divided government, a Democratic president. This time around, the president will be, or incoming president will be Donald Trump. And he will not be some shrinking violet on the sidelines, right? He's going to want, as we've been talking about, at least somewhat functional House of Representatives, at least nominally controlled by his party, up and running by the time he wants to start getting some of these bills into the ether.
So maybe President Trump should come out and speak then, maybe at this point,
Yeah,
right?
well, that's the other thing. Johnson should go down to Mar-a-Lago or get invited there.
Well, and there's also this, and real quick, I'll say even Republicans had a trifecta in 2017. They failed initially to repeal Obamacare, and that was with a large margin in the House, and we're talking about small margins here, so it's going to be interesting.
Hi, everyone, I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.